We're going to say a quick prayer and then begin with our opening remarks and our first senior. Please bow with me. Lord God, we come before you and thank you for another day of life. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for these young people, bringing them to this point. Please bless them with everything that they will need, specifically the three that will be presenting this morning. Grant them confidence as they address some difficult topics today. Calm their nerves so they may get up here and speak clearly and slowly enough that we can follow along with them. And then grant us grace to extend to them as they press forward in their presentation. May we all learn, retain, and celebrate something from what they share. This we ask and pray in your name, Jesus. Amen. We have now arrived at the final day of senior thesis. Though our topics over the last 3 days have been broad, there has been at least a consistent theme from the past 3. The acknowledgement of mental health. Today is where it shifts. Today we only have 3 seniors who will present, but they will tackle particular social issues that often incite divisive and intense reactions. Therefore, considering that some in this room, student and adult, will have differing views from our presenters, I ask that you please respect their time, respect their presence, respect their work, respect their voice, and respect their nervousness by limiting your noises and your body language to include today facial expressions from something you hear that you may disagree with, as well as any overt displays of sleeping. Once they finish, I will cue the panel to begin the Q&A. I also ask during the Q&A to continue limiting your noises and your body language. It is already hard to present these kinds of topics before your peers and adults, but it is harder to answer questions about these topics that you don't know how many you'll receive. Today's thesis theme is addressing harmful effects of some social issues. Our first thesis presentation is Miss Dominique She will be speaking on the negative impact of alcoholism and ways to reduce it.
Around 178,000 of lives die in the United States, while nearly 3 million die worldwide annually due to one cause. Yet this same thing is sold at every corner store and grocery outlet. Alcohol has been used for centuries for social, medical, cultural, and religious reasons. Alcohol is created through ethanol, which is formed during fermentation, where yeast converts sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. In 1920, the United States passed prohibition to ban almost anything related to alcohol. Yet alcohol was still being sold. On December 5th, 1933, prohibition was canceled and millions of people have struggled with alcoholism since then, even to the point of death. Every year, the intake of alcohol worsens. That is why alcohol needs tighter restrictions. Alcohol is a depressant that slows down the brain and nervous system. According to Oxford Languages, alcohol is a flammable liquid produced by fermentation and found in wine, beer, liquor, and other drinks. Alcoholism is an addiction to the consumption of alcohol liquor or compulsive behavior resulting from alcohol dependency. Addiction means a person is physically and mentally dependent on a substance and able to stop without harmful effects. So are tighter restrictions justified for people who are not addicts? Yes, because restrictions create legal limits. The government should increase alcohol taxes and restrict late-night alcohol sales and use in places like bars. These measures could reduce violence, drunk driving, and health problems. Making alcohol harder to access may discourage excessive drinking and dangerous behavior. Since alcohol is normalized, I submit that it needs tighter restrictions because it does more harm than good, both physically and mentally, and takes innocent lives. People drink alcohol for many reasons. Some drink to feel warm and relaxed, while others drink to forget their problems. Alcohol can make a person feel more confident and free. However, as the person drinks more, he or she becomes intoxicated and loses control. Others drink because they struggle with mental health. Yet, when the drinking is over, they are back to reality with nothing changed, but now with more cravings and a worsened mental health. Research shows that alcohol affects the brain by changing neurotransmitters that regulate mood, stress, and sleep, creating a chemical imbalance that impacts mental health. Alcohol is also linked to many diseases and increases the risk of serious health problems. It can contribute to liver disease, heart disease, brain, nervous system problems, seizures, digestive problems, and weakened immunity. Research from Harvard Health also notes that even small amounts may carry risk, including higher risk of certain cancers. This proves alcohol is a substance that can hurt your health at risk no matter the amount consumed. Additionally, alcohol can lead to social and behavioral consequences. Alcohol makes it harder for the parts of the brain that control balance, memory, speech, and judgment to do their jobs, resulting in a higher likelihood of injuries and other negative outcomes. The more a person drinks, the more alcohol physically and chemically changes how neurons function. A simple way to understand this is to view the brain like a big city. The neurons are tiny messengers, but when alcohol enters the city, it is like a fog rolling in. The messengers slow down, the mailboxes are damaged, and the roads shrink or disappear. Chronic heavy drinking can lead to brain atrophy, which is the loss of brain cells and neural connection. It can also lead to thiamine deficiency. This is especially dangerous during adolescence, when the brain is still developing and vulnerable to permanent damage. Alcohol can also affect a person's economic status. Addiction can lead to lost productivity, healthcare expenses, unemployment, and hardship. Chronic drinkers may lose their jobs, which can create desperation and worsen addiction. Even more, it affects the person's family because they are forced to carry the financial burden of alcohol-related healthcare expenses and debt. Ultimately, this financial ruin shows that alcohol reach extends far beyond the bottle. The second significant point I submit is that tighter sales restrictions will reduce risky behavior. Edgar Jr. was 16 years old when he passed away due to drunk driving. His father, Edgar Banuelo, was driving 100 miles per hour in a 25 miles per hour zone while under the influence of alcohol. He lost control of the vehicle, crashed into a tree, and caused the car to burn in flames. 2 children survived, but the oldest one did not. This is a story of too many people, and it does not have to be. In an article from 2010, research showed that a 10% increase in alcohol prices resulted in about a 5% reduction in drinking. Increased taxes led to higher prices, making alcohol less affordable, especially for younger consumers. Higher alcohol taxes can discourage binge drinking, especially for young drivers who cannot afford price increases. Changes in when and where alcohol is sold, or reducing how long it is sold, significantly decreases access for both youth and adult consumers. One article stated that drunk driving is more likely between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. and on weekends. This suggests that late-night alcohol availability contributes heavily to drunk driving and encourages people to drink longer in places like bars. Teenagers are a critically impacted group when it comes to alcohol. Around 4,000 people under the age of 21 die each year due to alcohol. This shows that alcohol is easy to access even though there is a legal drinking age. Teenagers are more likely to drink because of peer pressure, social status, and culture. For example, party drinking can lead to drunk driving, unprotected sex, or violent crimes, even accidentally. Starting to drink at a young age can become unhealthy patterns because teenagers may see alcohol as only a short-term problem or something they do for fun. Little by little, it can become an addiction. Higher prices can make it harder for them to access alcohol. A study from the Alcohol Research Group showed that shortening overnight operations by 7 hours at Baltimore bars and taverns resulted in a 51% immediate drop in homicides and a 23% annual decline in violent crimes nearby. The study focused on late-night crime around 26 bars and taverns. Limiting late-night alcohol availability, either by not selling it after a specific time or by closing bars earlier, decreases the chances of drunk driving, violent behavior, and other reckless actions. Lastly, tighter restrictions on alcohol can protect public health. Imagine it is 3 a.m. and a boy is in a deep sleep when he is suddenly awakened by his mother shouting his name. He gets up and follows. In his parents' room, his father is having a seizure caused by alcohol withdrawal, new medication, and diabetes complications. His eyes are wide, he is making weird noises, and he is moving uncontrollably. His little sister is standing at the end of the hall, awakened by the chaos. Soon, firefighters are in the room, huddling over his dad. There were footprints on the floor, and the boy is sobbing while trying to ask his mom questions. Then he is left home alone with his younger sister. That night he cannot sleep because he is traumatized. Moments like these leave emotional scars on families and children. Alcohol can cause dangerous drops in blood sugar, especially for people with diabetes who are managing their levels with medication. It is often alcohol withdrawal that causes seizures, not the drinking itself. Alcohol in the brain can mimic the actions of a car accident. When the person drinks heavily, the brain gets used to pushing the gas pedal more just to stay balanced. When the person suddenly stops drinking, the chemical brake disappears, but the brain is still pushing the gas pedal at full power. Without the alcohol to hold it back, the brain's electrical activity surges out of control. This massive electrical storm is what causes the seizure. This proves alcohol's danger extends far beyond the drinker, creating medical and emotional trauma. Likewise, alcohol is linked to cancer. Studies show that people who drink alcohol have a higher risk of certain cancers than people who do not drink. Alcohol can increase cancer by impairing the body's ability to break down and absorb nutrients. Some cancers connected to alcohol include breast cancer, liver cancer, and esophageal cancer. Cancers take away many lives every year. If alcohol raises the risk of many illnesses, it does not protect our health. Why risk your life for a moment of pleasure when this substance does not offer any real benefits? Alcohol does not just affect the mental health of the drinker, it also affects the mental health of those around alcoholics. Families can go through emotional distress, relationship issues, financial problems, and fear. Children can be especially impacted because they are forced to live with the consequences of someone else's addiction. Ultimately, the consequences of alcohol consumption prove that the struggle is rarely a solitary one, because it reshapes the lives and safety of everyone in the drinker's life. On the other side of my argument, some believe alcohol should not have tighter restrictions because not everyone who drinks is an addict. Alcohol can release stress and calm a person's mind. Every day, people drink a glass of wine to ease their mind after work. So a person should be allowed to enjoy themselves, especially if they are capable of maintaining themselves emotionally and physically. However, alcohol is a substance that affects the brain and body similarly to drugs. Clinical pharmacists can view alcohol as a drug with pharmacological impacts on medication and health, not only as a lifestyle issue. Alcohol may take away stress for a moment, but at what cost? It is temporary and can affect a person forever. Some may ask, what makes alcohol different from other pleasures like doom scrolling, binge watching, binge eating, or shopping addiction? All can have negative effects, but alcohol affects internal body systems and the brain. Alcohol cravings and withdrawals make it more dangerous than many other harmful habits. Cravings can be triggered by certain places, people, or memories connected to drinking. All pleasures are bad if they harm you, but some are stronger than others and can even harm the people you love. In conclusion, alcohol should have tighter restrictions because it does more harm than good, it will reduce risky behavior, and it will protect public health. Alcohol is an overlooked substance that affects many people's lives without people realizing it. It is so normalized that it has taken many lives, but there is often no justice for those who die because of it. Proverbs 31, 6-7 states, alcohol is for people who are dying, for those who are in misery. Let them drink and forget their poverty and unhappiness. This verse highlights that intoxicating substances may offer temporary relief, but true authority demands a clear mind to uphold justice. Alcohol offers temporary earthly distractions, but God is the only one who can truly take our stress, guilt, and pain. The world offers wine, so people can forget their misery, but the Spirit offers living water, so people can be transformed. While some may argue alcohol is a harmless social norm or escape, these arguments fall short compared to the physical and emotional reality. Alcohol continues to become more normalized each year, despite the damage it causes. There is no positive outcome from drinking because it hurts our health, relationships, and communities. We need tighter restrictions to reduce these harms and protect future generations. Change begins by raising awareness and offering a solution to save lives. It starts with one. Thank you.
I think by your peers, you see how well that was received. Great job, Ms. Dawn, great job. The floor is open to our panelists. The way this works is each of you will get at least one question per first, and if time permits, we'll go back and allow you a second one.
Thank you for that topic. The topic of alcoholism is so important, and you highlighted so many positive things. I have so many questions, but I'm going to get two. Let me just ask you first, I'm going to give you a bit of a softball question. You argued for restrictions, but I didn't hear what additional restrictions, because there are a number of legal restrictions already on alcohol. You mentioned drunk driving. It's illegal. You have to be 21 to drink alcohol. So a number of those things are already present. What restrictions would you argue should be? You did mention, by the way, you talk about prohibition. Are you suggesting that we go back to prohibition era restrictions on alcohol?
So in my thesis, at some point I did state that some restrictions could be like limiting the time it is sold, because I also stated that drunk driving and those risky behaviors are from 1 through 3 a.m. because that is usually the time when bars are open and people just tend to drink more. Also bringing education and helping people be more educated on what alcohol can do on your body can also help, I guess, reduce alcoholism.
So can I just follow up? So you mentioned one restriction.
Oh, yeah.
Education is not a restriction. All right, so the time of bars, are there any other restrictions that you can
Also,
think of?
I guess where it is sold, because I think a lot of like just grocery stores or regular places like a corner store, they have alcohol there. So I guess like limiting where they are sold, like only having a specific place where they are sold. I mentioned the time and so I guess, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Dominique, you did a really, really good job. Very poised, very confident. I love the eye contact, looking up while you were reading your paper. I love the impact of the story that you shared about Edgar. That stayed with me and it resonated with me. So I thought you did a very, very, very good job. You talked about some health complications that I actually wasn't even aware of. So your paper, your thesis actually served a really good purpose. So over the past few decades, the United States, they have ran a very deliberate public health campaign against cigarettes, okay? And removing smoking from bars and restaurants. At one point, you could smoke in bars and restaurants, and now you no longer can. They were airing graphic commercials featuring real people describing the effects of tobacco use. Those real scary commercials that make you not want to pick up a cigarette. And then some heavy restricting on advertisements. So that movement significantly changed public behavior and perception around smoking. You don't typically see as many smokers as I saw when I was a younger girl. So, in your research, did you come across any explanation for why a similar large-scale cultural or legislative movement hasn't taken hold of alcohol? Given that your paper argues it's pretty much comparable, if not greater harm. Did you run into anything like that? Like why we're not concentrating on alcohol the way we concentrated on smoking cigarettes?
So I didn't really come across that, but I did come across the fact that alcohol can harm you less compared to drugs. It is, like, they are similar in a lot of ways, but drugs are obviously can harm you way much more less. So I feel like the reason why there isn't as much recognition brought to alcohol is because it's so normalized, and I feel like by taking that away, it can also take away, I guess, businesses for some places, and I would just say that it's just so normalized compared to all these other substances, because like people really get, economically, people get a lot of money because of it, and even though it's supposed to be 21 and up, they still get a lot of money from teens, so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You presented your arguments about raising taxes on alcohol and restricting when it's sold so compellingly that my question may seem like a bit of a tangent, but throughout your presentation you talked about the effects on the mind, the brain, and the rest of the body from alcohol. And in the paper, it has just one brief mention of alcoholism as a mental illness. So for the most part, our society does consider alcoholism to be a disease. In fact, it's called alcohol use disorder. Do you think, well, in what ways do you see it as helpful or harmful for our society to label alcoholism as a disease?
I think it's helpful because it allows people to see it as, not to see it as such a small thing. You know, if we see alcohol as just alcohol, it's just like, okay, well, it's just a drink. But once you put a label like alcohol use disorder, it helps people realize, okay, there's a bigger name to it, and now it can maybe encourage them, like, I should look into this. I should realize why it's called that. And then when they do, they realize how it affects you mentally and physically.
Thank you.
Now a softball coming in your direction. Let me challenge, and I'd like to hear you respond to my challenge. First is just a simple question. Is it possible to abuse gifts that God gives people?
Yes.
Okay, Psalm 104 says that God gives, in the Old Testament, I think you see it throughout, the grain, the oil, and the wine. And literally, Psalm 104 says that wine gladdens the heart of men. Jesus turned water into wine at a party, and in abundance. When they ran out, he created more. So let me give you a quote, and then give you a response. Martin Luther, the great theologian, said this. He said, "Do not suppose that abuses are eliminated by destroying the object which is abused. Men can go wrong with wine and women. Shall we then prohibit and abolish women?" How would you respond to the idea, you know, I mean, in America, 700,000 people a year die from cardiac-related disease. The logic of your argument says, well, therefore there's particular foods we should also abolish them, because that's almost 5 times the number of people that die from alcoholism. So let me just bring the question to a clear point for you. Do you see the argument that wine could be a gift from God, and the issue is not the use of it, the issue is the abuse of it? Does that make sense?
So do I think that, sorry, can you restate your question again?
Yeah, is the issue the use of alcohol, or is the issue that I think you're arguing is the abuse of alcohol and alcoholism? Because what I'm challenging in your logic is, I think you're conflating the two. They're blurring. Is it the use of alcohol, or is it the abuse of alcohol that's the real issue?
So I think the issue can be both, because, you know, at the end of the day, the use of alcohol, it doesn't offer you any benefits. So when you continue to use alcohol, that's when it turns into abuse. You know, also the Bible states Jesus did turn water into wine. God didn't make wine for it to, you know, be anything bad, but us humans, we turned it into sin, you know. Ephesians 5:16 says, like, do not get drunk on wine. So it isn't a sin to drink, it's a sin to get drunk. But that's why us as a society, we have turned that, and we have made it bigger than it has, and that's why we turn use into abuse.
So I think you touched on what I was trying to get to. The issue you seem to be highlighting is drunkenness. I might challenge Jesus turned water into wine. So I think saying that it has no use or it's no good I think we have to, there's a question there we probably have to ask Jesus, so well, why did you turn it into wine? But I think you got to the point that I was after, which I think the issue is the abuse. And drunkenness actually is the thing that the scriptures are very clearly prohibits that. I'm going to stop there because you answered the question.
Okay, so Ms. Dawn, that's actually good pushback for you as you move into young adulthood and college, that as you share your views along with your fellow seniors and clearly those of today, that in sharing your view or your argument for a thing, be okay with compromising an objective perspective from those on the other side. So Mr. Anderson saying use versus abuse is a good line in the sand when you communicate what your argument is actually for, so that those that may actually agree with you don't feel like you've thrown their group into the abuse side. Does that make sense? Okay, good job, Ms. Dawn.
I think you deserve an easy question after that last question. Okay, Dominique, so I actually admire how passionate you were when you communicated your speech with us, and when while you were speaking. It was very compelling. I want to know if your topic, what were you inspired by when you picked this topic? Was it a personal experience? Was it something that you experienced with your peers? What inspired you to talk about this topic, and why is it so important to you?
I think that what inspired me was the fact that there isn't enough recognition brought to it. A lot of families, and I would say that mine, has been impacted by alcohol, and I have seen how it impacts other people as well. I've seen how it's impacted my family, my friends, and I've never seen a positive outcome. I mean, one can drink, just for the fun of it, but then while doing my research, I realized there's generally no benefit to it. So I think what inspired me was the fact that I was also I lacked knowledge. And so I want others to also have that knowledge to realize that it's really it's not worth it. I mean, you can have it and it can, do what it wants to do, but at the end of the day, I don't think it should be as big of a deal in society.
I think that's good. What you said, you lack knowledge. Do you think that there's a need to insert more preventative classes and education in the schools or in the churches, in different community organizations? Do you feel like there's a strong need for that?
I would say yes, especially in schools, because unfortunately there's a lot of teens that engage in drinking, and I feel like if we educate them on that, then that can step them back.
I appreciate that. My husband and I were both raised by two alcoholics, and there wasn't a lot of awareness then. And I remember thinking that there was some bizarre kind of mental illness that turned my parents into different people every night, but had no idea that it was alcohol. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to come back to my issue just to press a little bit harder. So I appreciated your biblical perspective that the world offers wine so we can forget our misery, but the Spirit offers living water so we can be transformed. And the Bible talks about idols of the heart, things that we put in the place of God. And certainly for many people, alcohol is one of them. What difference might it make? Just imagine a person in your mind. What difference might it make to that person to understand that they have an idol that by God's might and mercy they can turn aside from, as opposed to thinking that they have a disease they have to live with for the rest of their life?
So can you see the question?
Yeah, so what difference might it make to think of alcohol as an idol, something you put in the place of God, as opposed to a disease?
I say seeing, as a Christian aspect, seeing alcohol as an idol, it can help you see that, the commandments says, don't have any other idols except for God. So when you see it as an idol, you're pretty much idolizing wine instead of God, and you're turning to wine to take away your pain. But as I stated, God is the only one who can take away that pain. So by idolizing your drinking, I pretty much idolizing the problem, you're idolizing the stress. And God is there to take away all that stress, all those problems that you're turning to wine, that you're turning to like consult and walk.
So that might be more helpful than thinking of it as a disease?
I think in a Christian aspect, it can be more helpful instead of looking at it as a disease, because some Christians might be like, well, God created wine, and that means he wants me to drink.
Like Mr. Anderson.
Yeah. But
Mr. Anderson, do not respond to that.
I think that, at least as a Christian, it helps me realize that God is my only idol. God is the only one that's going to be there, and no drink, no substance can replace that, no matter how big or small it is.
Okay, I'm going to keep Mr. Anderson from responding. Tom, young folk, first of all, round of applause for Ms. Dawn. Forewarns you how intense the reactions can get to these topics, okay? Ms. Dawn, you handled the Q&A portion like a champ. And as you can see, just from the three panelists that asked you questions, that's probably a microcosm of other people in the room that have a view on it as well. None of that is to discourage Mr. Anderson. We were from Mrs. Snyder, was that a shot, young folk? None of that was a shot. This is actually called civil dialogue. This is what we need more of in today's time, which is not what you often see in the media or from our current politicians. That said, so that you can hear it, Ms. Dominique was arguing for the harmful effects of alcoholism. There is a difference with classifying drinking as a sin from the sinfulness of drunkenness. Those are two different things. Ms. Dominique was not arguing for that in her paper. Make sure you hold on to what she was arguing for, the harmful effects of alcoholism and ways to reduce it.